Hello! Your humble, friendly neighborhood host and narrator, JT Wheatley, back again for another episode of the History of Comic Books podcast. This time, the history of Batman, Part 2. When we left off, Batman had just enjoyed the worldwide success of his first Batman movie by Tim Burton, and had reached arguably one of the heights of his popularity. Of course, in the comic books, DC was no doubt willing to capitalize on it, so they chose to release not one, but two new Batman series. The Legends of the Dark Knight, which focuses on his earliest adventures, and The Shadow of the Bat, which details stories of characters around Batman. They also put out Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison and Dave McKeown, a psychologically challenging story that finds Batman forced to enter Arkham when Joker and his fellow villains have taken it over. This was the launch of numerous Batman one-shots and miniseries that capitalized on the movie's popularity. One notable one was Gotham by the Gaslight by Mike Mignola, later of Hellboy fame, which reimagines Bruce Wayne and Batman in the 19th century as he takes on none other than Jack the Ripper. However, all of this success was short-lived, as it was only building up to the eventual speculation crash of the mid-1990s. Back in the movies, though, of course a sequel is immediately in the works for the Batman movie, with Sam Hamm rehired to write it. In his first draft, he featured the villains Penguin and Catwoman, along with introducing Robin. Burton, riding the success of the first film, was awarded full creative control in August 1991, hiring his own crew and writer, Daniel Water, who decided to make Penguin into a freak from the circus. While more than a few actors were considered for the role, Danny DeVito was the clear choice and quickly signed. As for Catwoman, things got a bit more complicated. Sean Young, who was originally cast as Vicky Vale in the first film before breaking her arm and being replaced by Kim Basinger, started a strange campaign for the role, going so far as to dress up as Catwoman and even appearing on the Joan Rivers show in costume. She was ignored, and Annette Bening was cast instead, but when she got pregnant, was replaced by Michelle Pfeiffer. Meanwhile, Wesley Stark was brought on to give another draft to the script, this time cutting out Robin and changing the Penguin's plan from going after the Gotham's firstborn children instead of freezing the city. Produced on a record budget of $80 million, the film premiered on June 19, 1992 to a record-breaking $45 million opening and eventual $160 million domestic gross, $267 worldwide. However, the critical and fan reaction was decidedly more mixed from the first film, with many complaining the film was too dark and the Penguin just downright nasty character. He at one point spews bile and even bites someone's nose. Plus, not only did Batman continue to kill, but he smiled at one point when he did it. However, Michelle Pfeiffer's performance as Catwoman was electrifying, so much so that the Warner Brothers spent an additional $250,000 for a reshoot that implied she lived at the end of the film. Also, while many didn't like the story Burton pushed, his art direction and imagery were as stunning as ever, with Danny Elfman delivering another memorable score. Plus, since it takes place during Christmas, it's found more than its way in a few Christmas movie rotations. Personally, it's in mine, along with Iron Man 3. However, the most exciting event with Batman wasn't in the movies, but on TV, when Batman, the animated series, premiered on September 5th, 1992. Crafted by Alan Burnett, Bruce Timm, and Paul Dini, it was a cartoon series that took advantage of the popularity of Batman's dark turn in the comics and movies, but was really more based on the Denny O'Neil Neil Adams run in the 1970s. They operated on 4 rules. Batman works alone, he's a vigilante and doesn't trust the cops, no Dick Grayson, which was quickly ignored, and dark action. The last rule was done by artist Eric Rodansky, who made the daring move of having the series animated on black paper instead of white, thus giving it the dark, moody image. Bruce Timm's art designs, meanwhile, were simplistic and paid homage to the classic Fleischer studio animation style. Voice acting-wise, Kevin Conroy was cast to play Batman Bruce Wayne, who spoke in his normal voice as Batman, while as Bruce Wayne went to a higher pitch, making the subtle distinction that Batman was his real personality. Tim Curry was originally cast as the Joker, but when his voice came out too scary, he had trouble with the lighter moments, Mark Hamill was then hired, who provided a perfect balance of scary and funny, and became an inspired choice, despite freaking out more than a few fans, like myself, when we realized that's the same actor who played Luke Skywalker. Both actors would voice their characters for years afterwards in various cartoons and video games, with many still today calling their versions of the definitive Batman and the Joker. The praise wasn't just for them, though, as the show was universally acclaimed as capturing the essence of Batman for the dark, intelligent, mature nature, serious stories, and even a bit of the 1960s camp. It became an instant success, and its episode Robin's Reckoning won the 1993 Emmy for Best Outstanding Animated Program. Its depictions of numerous other characters were also considered spot on, from the Riddler to Mr. Freeze. Mark Waid called his origin episode, Heart of Ice, one of the 5 best Batman stories ever depicted. The Penguin still had to be deformed like in Batman Returns by studio mandate, but Denny and Tim made sure he was an upper-class gentleman over the disgusting slob depicted by Danny DeVito. In later episodes, he would also be depicted as owning a high-class joint called the Iceberg Lounge as a front for his criminal operations. It helped the producers use comic book writers like Lynn Wein, Denny O'Neil, and Jerry Conway to help write the episodes, giving an additional layer of authenticity. However, it wasn't just perfecting what was already in Batman that the animated series did so great, but they also added something new. In the episode Joker's Favor, he was depicted surprising someone by bursting out of a birthday cake. At first, the writers thought that was too strange, even for the Joker, and created a female underling to do it instead. Interestingly enough, in the episode, the Joker ends up doing that anyway because, let's be honest, nothing's too strange for the Joker. However, the idea of a female sidekick stayed, and Arlene Sorkin, a voice actress Paul Dini had known since college, was brought on for the part. According to Mark Hamill, she was just supposed to be a big character, but when Sorkin uttered the immortal line, "Mr. J," he heard it, looked to Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, and suddenly they realized there was something more here, and thus Harley Quinn was born. Instantly becoming a fan favorite and integrated into comic books, with her origin detailed in the Batman Adventures Mad Love of 1994 by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, which won the Eisner and Harvey Award of 1994 for Best Single Issue. In it, it was revealed that she was with Harley Quinzel, a young and promising psychiatrist who thought she could cure the Joker at Arkham Asylum. However, instead of Harley making Joker more sane, he made her insane, and thus would later break him out, donning the guise of Harley Quinn. Much of her characteristics are based on Arlene Sorkin's own personality, while her introduction added another level of Joker's villainy. While some fans misinterpret it as a loving romance, Joker from the beginning is depicted as being physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive to Harley, who still loves him due to being beat down and suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. It's a tragic element to her character and has even been explored further in the comic books and even video games, such as the excellent Injustice games, in which when Harley does free herself from the Joker's glass, she actually gets better. Well, better at least in terms of Harley. Since then, the character has been depicted in numerous other mediums, such as the live action by Mia Sara in the short-lived Birds of Prey TV series, and in the movies by Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad. It should be noted that due to the fact that Harley Quinn was created in the cartoon and not the comic, Denny and Tim didn't qualify for DC's royalty program, since that only applied to characters created in the comics. Despite that, she is so ingrained in the canon now that very few people cannot think of Joker without thinking of Harley Quinn. As for the cartoon on a whole, it will go on to produce another 110 episodes, eventually moving to WB Network, where Batgirl was introduced as the main character, along with Tim Drake taking up the Robin mantle, essentially merging him and Jason Todd, while Dick Grayson moved on as Nightwing. The series would even get a big screen movie in Masks of the Phantasm on December 25, 1993, along with 2 direct-to-video films, and even a comic book spin-off, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. To date, it is considered by many to be the definitive take on Batman, including me personally. If I was told there was only one version of Batman I could pick for the rest of my life, this is it right here. Back in the comics, a new experiment was being tried, partly inspired by the success of The Death of Superman, but also by Image Comics, with the success of it having more fancifully designed and violent characters. Denny O'Neil decided to try something by replacing Bruce Wayne with Jean-Paul Valley as a character whose alter ego Azrael was introduced in the Batman miniseries Sword of Azrael by Kevin Nolan and Joe Quesada back in 1992. Beginning with Batman Vengeance of Bane by Chuck Dixon and Graham Nolan, a new villain, Bane, was created with the mission to take down Batman and rule Gotham, similar to Doomsday for Superman. During the Nightfall crossover throughout the various books, Arkham Asylum is destroyed, leading to all the Batman villains being released at once. Pushed to exhaustion to capture them all, it leads Batman to battling Bane in the Batcave in Batman number 47 on June 1993, where Bane beats him and breaks his back. Unable to carry on the mantle, he passes it to Jean-Paul Valley, who designs a garish new suit and defeats Bane in Batman number 500. This was a direct response to Image Comics, as this Batman looked like he would fit right in with those new characters, and that was the point. Denny O'Neil wanted to show that while others were imitating the Image look, he was showing it was a mistake and that the classic characters should stick with what works. At least he hoped. He did state if the fans ended up liking this version of Batman, it would have been a failure. Thankfully, fans rightfully rejected Jean Paul Valley as Batman, especially since he was more violent attitude led to a man dying. Thus, Bruce Wayne would eventually reclaim the Batman mantle, while Valley returned being Azrael. Of course, this event was part of the larger comic build-up in general that led to the speculation crash of the mid-1990s, with sales across the board sagging. It got so bad that only crossovers like Batman vs. Predator cracked the top 100 in sales, while the Spawn Batman crossover did lead to it being the top-selling book of 1994. That same year, DC decided to once again revamp their continuity with Zero Hour, and Batman went through a few changes as well. They dispensed with Catwoman being a prostitute from Batman Year One, something that most fans approved of, while making the killer of Bruce Wayne's parents a mystery, making his mission become a larger and not being about vengeance, but justice. He truly became the Caped Crusader at this point. In addition, a new element was added in that Batman was now considered a myth in the DC universe, with only a few people knowing he actually existed. Something O'Neil wanted to do back with the Crisis of Infinite Earths, but was circumvented when he was put into the Justice League revamp, thus still a public figure. That did lead to the classic scene of Batman punching out Guy Gardner, though, so all's well that ends well. Meanwhile, back on the movie front, Warner Bros. Decided to go a different route after the mixed reception of Batman Returns, especially its overly dark turn, and they set out to find a new director for a more lighthearted touch. After trying out John McTiernan, who was booked, and rejecting Sam Raimi, they hired Joel Schumacher of Lost Boys and Falling Down. In July 1993, Lee and Janet Scott Batchelor met with Tim Burton, who now served as producer, who suggested they explore the duality of Batman Bruce Wayne along with his villains. As a result, a sexy psychiatrist is introduced as a love interest, including a scene in an early draft where Batman's having sex with her while still wearing his mask. Schumacher was ready to explore this as well and emphasized the costume design to be even more idealized look, leading to the infamous bat nipples. Meanwhile, Riddler and Two-Face were written as the villains. Robin Williams was originally approached for the role of the Riddler and excited to do it, but turned it down once he read the script. Instead, they hired then-upcoming actor Jim Carrey. Two-Face created a complication because Schumacher wanted Oscar-winning actor Tommy Lee Jones, having previously worked with him on the movie The Client, but that would require buying out Billy D. Williams, who originally played Harvey Dent in the 1989 Batman. Williams' contract was a multi-picture deal signed with the intention of playing the Two-Face in a later sequel. He wasn't the only other black actor bought out, as Marlon Wayans was originally cast as Robin, who was a streetwise kid who was supposed to be introduced in Batman Returns, in favor of Chris O'Donnell. This led to some allegations of racism against the studio that, while not intentional, did taint the production. However, the biggest casting change was Batman himself, as Michael Keaton passed after reading the script and objected to another two-villain film, since he believed that was one of the biggest problems with Returns. Burton immediately wanted Johnny Depp, of course, while the studio favored Kurt Russell or Val Kilmer, ultimately choosing Kilmer. Finally, Nicole Kidman was cast as Chase Meridian, the psychiatrist, and Bob Kane once again was hired on as a consultant, who proceeded to proclaim that Kilmer would be better than Michael Keaton. Production ended up running smoothly under Schumacher, ending weeks ahead of schedule and millions of dollars under budget, reaffirming Warner Bros.' belief in hiring him. They also used a new advertising tactic in the Batman Forever website, the first for a movie. The film opened on June 16, 1995, to a then record-breaking $52.7 million, eventually grossing $184 million domestic and $337 million worldwide, bigger than Returns. It also brought in another $1 billion in merchandise sales. However, the promotion on the internet did backfire when message boards were lit up with complaints about the movie, with many fans worrying about how close it veered to the old Adam West series, and of course, those bat nipples. Granted, the film did manage to appeal to gay audiences, something Schumacher, who is openly gay, did intend. He didn't make Batman gay, as his romance with Chase Meridian showed he was still quite straight, but understood his appeal to homosexual audiences as well and felt they deserved to be served. Despite this criticism, the financial success made Warner Bros. Believe that Schumacher was the right guy for the fourth Batman movie. Unfortunately. Batman and Robin began production with the hiring of Akiva Goldsman as the writer, who previously worked with Schumacher with Batman on Batman Forever, Time to Kill, and The Client, with Schumacher now getting full creative control.